Well, a very pleasant good afternoon to all of our viewers. We are delighted to welcome you to our Let's Talk this afternoon. Today being the 29th day of the month of August, uh, 2020. We are so delighted that you have uh, taken the time to be with us today. And we are having our second part in this two-part series on Christian education. Why pay for education when you can get it for free? We have again with us this afternoon our three panelists. We have Dr. Hilary Bowman. Dr. Hilary Bowman presently serves as the Director of Education for the Caribbean Union, and he also is the president of the University of the Southern Caribbean. Dr. Bowman has a distinctive long life of service in the church. He has given most of his working life to Adventist education, and we're delighted to have him with us this afternoon. We also have Brother Jermaine Jarvis. Some of you may know him as Glenroy, but he's here with us this afternoon. Brother Jarvis he's a tax auditor in the Inland Revenue Department, a young professional who is a product of Adventist education, a graduate of the Antigua and Barbuda Secondary School. We're delighted to have him with us and back with us because he was here last week as well. And we also have Eulanie Lashley, who also is a product of Adventist education, and she works in Florida, the Florida area. I believe her work has to do with financial analysis in some of the hospitals there. Delighted to have you with us all, and trust that our discussion this afternoon will be meaningful. We want to welcome all of our viewers. We are so happy that you are back with us. And today we are going to be continuing our discussion from where we left off last week. Some of you had some questions that we were not able to get to last week, but we will attempt to answer those questions in the process of our discussion. We want to begin with a word of prayer, shall we? Almighty Father and our God, be with us as we go into this afternoon's broadcast. We pray for your wisdom and your guidance. Take full control and grant that your name will be glorified, and may we be able to adequately share relevant information as we discuss this very important issue of Christian education. Take full control again, we pray in your precious name. Amen. So we are here, Dr. Bowman, Brother Jarvis, and Sister Lashley. I introduced you just now. Welcome. And of course, last week we had a very intriguing discussion. We did establish last week that there was something important about having a good foundation. Brother Jarvis shared his experience and his conversion story. He was exposed to the message in school. Sister Lashley also shared her experience, and Dr. Bowman, from his perspective as an administrator and educator, sought to give us some of the benefits of Christian education. I want to begin this afternoon, however, by talking to the issue first. We want to cover tertiary level education. We want to talk about some of the distinctives, but I want to begin with the whole concept of why Adventist education. Now, I'm not from Adventist parents and did not grow up in the church, so to speak. So I'm a first generation Adventist. I was converted to Adventism along the way. I went to a non-Adventist primary school and non-Adventist secondary school. I did A levels at the Antigua State College. CUC was my first Adventist experience. I had, therefore, you may say, a secular education up to the secondary level. If Adventist education is really just adding a few Bible lessons to what I get from the secular system, my question is it really worth it? Is there something more to Adventist education? Should we expect anything different from Adventist education than from the secular education. And I may ask this question. There are other Christian schools that are not Adventist. There is Catholic, there is Baptist, there is Methodist, Pentecostals, etc. Some of these institutions have schools and offer what they call Christian education. What is the difference? Dr. Bowman, I want to begin with you. What is the difference between just education where the teachers pray and sing songs and start with devotion in the morning and a Seventh-day Adventist Christian education? Unmute for us, Dr. Bowman.
I would start by saying that Adventist education, Adventist schools are not just another school. They're uniquely different in their philosophy and the outreach in education. Adventist education primarily is designed to restore the image of God in our young people. And our target group is basically the Adventists. And if we look at our value system as a church, a person's lifestyle, a person is who he is based on his value system. And what we try to do in Adventist education is to nurture our young people after the value system that is found in the Bible, that is based on the character of Jesus Christ himself. And so we do everything to help the child to be reformed and transformed in the image of God. Would everybody who go to Adventist school be redeemed and transformed in the image of God? May not. But we have the data shown us that young people, individuals who have attended Adventist school, as I've shown last week, have a greater chance of remaining faithful to the church and faithful to the Lord. We look at, let us say, the value system. The value system is an Adventist value system, which is a value system that is taught in the home, the value system that is taught in the church, and the value system that is taught in the school, all in one. And at our school level, we are concerned about the child's welfare relative to his values and character development. And so we focus a lot on values and character development of the child. And while we want academic education to be number one, we are very much deliberate in the business of character development. We graduate people from our schools, the high schools, the universities, to go out into the society, not to be just another citizen, but to be an exemplary person who would help to bring about the change in which we want in the society. And so we have had the data showing that many of the persons who employ our graduates, whether from the high school or from the university, they commend us for the quality of persons that we graduate from school. They are entirely different than everybody else. It's not just Bible taught on in our schools, from primary to university. It's about a Christocentric program. Christ becomes the focus on the playground, in the classroom, and once you're on the campus, that's what it is. Our teachers are supposed to model Christ. They're supposed to be that kind of model that our young people can emulate, whether at school, in the community, or where have you. I know that's a debate by itself, but that's far as what I want to tell you at this point in time. But there's a deliberate attempt to help the child to develop a character after Christ himself.
Now, you mentioned something there that I want to come back to in a while. In a while, you did say that it's more than providing quality academics. I want to come back to that because there's an expectation that the academics should be of a certain quality. But let me ask Eulanie and Jermaine, you both have children, I understand. If you send your children to the Adventist school, what would you hope that they would get that they would not get somewhere else?
So I think I can take that one first. Until probably about a week or so ago, it's probably going to surprise you, but I actually had my son enrolled in a Christian school that was not an Adventist school. He had been in that school from kindergarten up through the end of second grade. And so my husband and I, at the end of last year, started talking some about the experience that we were having at the school. It's a great school, phenomenal teachers, excellent education. But one of the things that we felt that we were missing really was connection. My son's very active. He loves sports. He likes being outside, but all the activities that are offered, the games are all on Friday evenings or on Saturdays at times that are just inaccessible to him because of our own personal beliefs. And so that was difficult for us because, of course, those social activities are another way for the child to make connections with the school and to build friendships for life. And having him not be able to access those was very difficult. So that was one thing that we started thinking through. The other thing was just a sense of community outside of the normal school hours, right? So he would go to school during the week, but there are very few instances where he was interacting with his classmates outside of a school setting, which is also very important for our kids. So at the end of last semester, we really started talking about what we wanted for him. He's a naturally smart child, and I think he'll be successful anywhere from an academic perspective. But what became very important to us was for his ability to build those connections and build a community outside of school where he could link the two things together. So we made the decision over the summer to transition him from that Christian school into an Adventist school. We're excited. We thought about the fact that when he had week of prayer, it's like several opportunities for him to learn more about Jesus and accept his love into his heart. And there are not as many instances for him where he's the only Adventist in a room, which he honestly is fine with. He consistently tells the kids that they go to school and go to church on the wrong day. But so he was okay with that. But just to give him more of that culture that he's used to from home and provide him with more opportunities for social connection and for connection, a deeper connection to Jesus, we thought that was important. So I think I've had the benefit of seeing both sides. And I can tell you that from our perspective, at least, there was the opportunity for him to fall in love with his own faith among his people was honestly the thing that eventually made us transition him away from the other Christian school into the Adventist school.
Okay, very interesting perspective, and thank you for being that open. Appreciate it, and that's what we really want to happen here on this program, because we are not in any way attempting to bury the facts or to hide. We want to be really practical, and we're going to talk about some hard things this afternoon. Brother Jarvis, do you care to share a perspective?
The most important thing for me as a father is to ultimately have my children saved. And as an Adventist, that's important. And I would have made a vow, I think, since I have left school at a very young age, even before I had children, that I would make a commitment to give them a Christian Seventh-day Adventist education. And so my children started school as well outside of Christian education because we never had an early childhood center. And they were going to a very good school here. And as soon as the early childhood center started, we then switched the first one over, and now the second one is as well there. And also my biggest one is now in the Adventist primary school, which I attended. And one of the things that comfort me is that she's going into a class now where there was a teacher who actually taught me. And this is one of the things that brings comfort to me, because I know for a fact that teacher is a teacher who really cares more than just beyond the education that they would be getting. It's a real genuine care for the individual. And that's something that I really prefer to have than any other thing. And as well, that eventually she'll be receiving the unique education with the unique values that I was taught.
Okay, so there was a question in the chat, and I do want to comment at this time that, we do have a lot of exchanges in the chat. We appreciate that. There are lots of people who are watching, and there is free flow of information. It is not always easy or possible for me to pull out a question here or there. I observed that there were some questions that were asked last week that we did not get time to answer, but the course of our discussion this week will answer some of those questions. One of the questions that I just glanced at and which we are speaking to right now is the whole matter of the difference between Adventist education and Christian education, and whether it's okay for me to just choose Christian education and not specifically Adventist education. I want to share a brief quote from a magazine that I was glancing through. This was posted in Australia from an Australian author. It's a magazine in Adventist education, written 2 years ago, not 2020, but 2 years ago, but still relevant. And it says that Adventist education is in fact all about choice. It reinforces family values and spiritual nurture, or in some cases provides values and spiritual nurture that the family wants to see but cannot provide. While all schools highlight learning for life, Adventist education sees a much bigger picture. We recognize that there is much more than just this present life. And I want to go into this element right now. The matter of why we have Adventist schools. Why don't we settle just for Christian education as opposed to Adventist education? So let's talk a little bit more about the distinctives. Now, I heard Eulanie indicating that she has had the privilege. Children were one way, she's put them another way. She's more comfortable now. Is there not a stage in the development of our children when a teacher is more of an authority figure than the parent? Is there a time, Dr. Bowman, you are an experienced educator, is there a time in the development of the life of a child when what teacher says is more important than what mommy or what daddy says?
Yes, certainly. You find that very significant in the primary school in particular, where the child spends more times sometimes with the teacher than with the parent, and the child tends to believe what the teacher says. And if the teacher says 2 and 2 is 5, then it's 2 and 2 is 5. And the parent will say, no, 2 and 2 is 4. No, my teacher said 2 and 2 is 5, and my teacher is right. And so we have to place our children in an environment where they can get honest teaching, teaching that would not create dissonance in the mind of the child relative to the home, the church, or the school, as I have said. And so that is quite true. We have to choose quite correctly the environment in which we want to place our children in. For example, I have had different examples that I could quote where students tend to believe in their teachers, especially in that early age. And that's a time when children are ready to make decisions, and they will make decisions based on the information they receive at a very early age. At the primary school, we have more students baptizing in the primary schools than at the high schools, because that's the level at which they tend to make decisions, and they make decisions based on the information they receive from their school and from their homes. And so it is very important that we place Adventist children in Adventist schools where they can get the correct teaching and thus creating less dissonance for the child.
Sister Eulanie, when I asked that question just now, I saw a smile on your face. It says something. So let me ask you to comment.
I mean, I honestly think children, from the moment they start school, at least for me with my son, I felt like it was in kindergarten that he came home with the opinion that his teacher knew more than his father and I knew. So I feel like that comes at a very early age, which to Dr. Bowman's point is one of the reasons why it's critical for you to make sure that the people and the environments that you're placing your kids in at a young age are consistent with your own values, whether they're religious or otherwise, just making sure that you have them in the environment that encourages them in the direction that you want them to go in. I will say that, you know, it was a really good learning for my husband and I for the path that the journey that we have been on with Nathan. And honestly, I never thought that I would have been in a situation where I would have opted for Christian education as opposed to Adventist education. But I'm very grateful for the things that I've learned on that journey, because it really does strike me now that there is something very unique and meaningful to me as a Seventh-day Adventist in having my child in that environment, because I know that when he gets to certain challenges at school, I don't have to worry about the response that the teacher is going to give him and undoing any unintended harm that they would have done with their version of Christianity when they speak to him. So we're all speaking the same language, kind of pulling in the same direction. And that's really the most beneficial thing for us.
Now, Dr. Bowman, I was in a program I think it was in Grenada. You may not remember. It was a session in Grenada a few years ago. And you did make a point about persons wanting to petition the Catholic school because they're allowing children to genuflect, etc. I remember you standing up and saying, why are you going to tell the people what to do in their school? It's their school, you choose to go. If you choose to go, that's what you expect. And you made a point, Adventist education is for Seventh-day Adventists. That's significant, because I was, again, reading an article. I believe George Knight is the author of this article. And he emphasized that there is something intentional, or should be rather, intentional about Adventist education. And he made the point that parents who send their children to Seventh-day Adventist school do so with the expectation that the school will pass on certain values unique to Adventism to those children. And I see Eulanie shaking her head there. So a word on Adventist education is for Adventists.
And Dr. Greene, thank you for reminding me of that experience. Adventist education has a structure. It's probably the only denominational system that has a structure that goes from a general conference right down to the local level, where we cannot just run our school the way we want to run our school. There is a supervisory level right through, and we have to ensure that we provide for the spiritual nurture and the academic development of the child. And so we have not just prayer sessions, we have the whole business of weeks of prayer, morning worship, the whole matter of integrating what we teach relative to our faith, you know, and so as you teach, every lesson must have an objective to bring about that faith and learning. And so it's a deliberate attempt for us. And as you mentioned in Grenada, for example, when they got to Grenada, they were saying, listen, Dr. Bowman, we want you to accompany us to the Ministry of Education, because they should not be allowing our children to genuflect and to make the sign of the cross and so forth. So I said, why are you doing that? That's their school. They're doing the right thing for their children. They're correct. They're doing the right thing for their children. If you do not want your children to genuflect and to make the sign of the cross and to do whatever with Mother Mary or what have you, you need to find the school that fits your philosophy, which is the Seventh-day Adventist school, fits your philosophy, because it has to do with your perception of God, your truth, what is truth for you, would influence your value system, would influence your philosophy, and determine what happens to you and your child. Your value system make up who you are. And so we have to understand that Adventist education is not just a Bible tucked on, but it's a deliberate attempt and a deliberate program organized to make sure that the child receive an Adventist-oriented education.
Now, there are two areas I want us to cover this afternoon before we finish. I want us to deal with the matter of the quality. There are lots of persons who have questions regarding the quality. I know, for example, well, let me just say that there are lots of people who say, well, you know, I want to send my children to a school where they can be exposed to the latest things. The infrastructure must be of a certain standard, etc. We do have an obligation to provide quality. Let me reference again another article that I came across talking about, and specifically this article sought to ask the question, can education be Adventist and excellent too? And the point that was made here is that the philosophy of Adventist education, in fact, there's an interesting quote here from Ellen White, where she says that God expects us to reach to the highest ideals possible. And therefore, when we talk about Adventist education, we should of necessity be talking about quality. But to be realistic, we do have some setbacks. We do have some limitations. What can be done to really move us in that right direction?
I am very happy for this aspect of excellence in Adventist education. And we have to be, again, deliberate in our academic program. We put our spiritual program firstly, number one. But academic program must go hand in hand in terms of excellence. We should not have a watered down program. A few years ago, I captioned a theme for Adventist education in the Caribbean Union, and that theme was academic excellence in a spiritually charged environment. Academic excellence in a spiritually charged environment, showing the significance and the importance of both academic and spiritual. So we have to continue to upgrade. In the Caribbean Union, for example, we have spent a lot of time having workshops, bringing new ideas in. We put our school on the data analysis program and data-driven instruction, stuff like that. And these things have really helped our schools, as you know, Dr. Greene, in the Caribbean Union, by implementing and taking a very deliberate attempt to have our schools improve academically, have excelled so well, way above many of the prestigious schools. And we have the individuals in the church who would say, listen, those Adventists are not good enough for us. But we're taking students at the average and we're making them stars academically. And hopefully they will start spiritually. We have had in a few of our schools taken the lead in the CSEC program.
Well, Dr. Bowman, I want to comment here because I know, for example, from my perspective in Antigua, I've heard folks say, well, look at the CXC results. You know, there are some schools that occupy the top position. There is a difference, however, because, you know, in the Adventist school, we give everybody a chance. In some schools, if they know you're not going to pass, they don't believe you're going to get a very good grade, They don't allow you to write the exam. I know, and I would like to hear from Brother Jarvis and Sister Lashley on this one, because, having gone through the system in Antigua, I know there was a time when in Antigua, the school was located at a place that was not very pleasant, and people struggled, and parents would send the children who were underachievers to the school, but the teachers still did their thing and were able to get success out of those. Let me ask Brother Jarvis this question. While going to now you did pretty well in school, but while going to the Adventist school, did you feel that you were in any way disadvantaged because of the infrastructure, because of the quality of teaching, etc.? What was your experience as you spoke to your friends in other schools?
I never really feel disadvantaged. I think we were doing well. We were taught well, and I think as well the additional interest, the additional care you get from teachers. Because I can tell you, you would have said that I would have done well at CXC level, and yes, I passed all my subjects, but I also repeated first form. I was not one of the naturally brilliant children, and as I turned my focus in about third form, and you had teachers who were very encouraging and look out for me, it helped me to focus a bit, and I eventually did well at CXC and go on to do well in other institutions. But I was not a naturally brilliant child. And so that additional care and focus can do a lot for individuals who are struggling within educational system. So the educational system there, it was good. The teachers were supportive, and it helps.
Okay, wonderful. That's interesting, because I do want to emphasize this fact. I believe it is important that when a child goes to the Adventist school and the child graduates, that the system should do something for that child. And we say again, and I just read that we are concerned beyond the here and now. The here and now is extremely important, but we are concerned beyond the here and now. For scripture says, what shall it profit you if you will gain the whole world and lose your own soul? But let us just for a moment go to tertiary education.
Tertiary education. If we go there, Pastor.
Yes, Dr. Bowman.
There's a statement I read somewhere. While I'm not downplaying great facilities, we should strive towards having the best facilities. But I read a statement somewhere that said, it is better to have good teachers in average facilities than to have poor teachers in great facilities. If you have your child and you have great teachers in average facilities, or great facilities with poor teachers, which would you choose? Eulanie? The teacher, I want to point out, makes a great difference. There's a correlation between the relationship and love and appreciation that is shown by a teacher to a child in terms of development and learning. A teacher makes the great difference. Do all our teachers in our schools satisfy us the way we want? I don't think so. But the majority of our teachers are committed, are dedicated, and that's what we want, the commitment and the dedication to impact the philosophy of Adventist education of our young people.
Okay, Sister Eulanie, you wanted to comment on something there?
No, I mean, I guess I was gonna piggyback off of some of what Glenroy was saying a little earlier. I mean, I went to Adventist school too for pretty much all my life there in Antigua. And like, I remember even as a kid, like would hear people say certain things, but there was never a point during my educational journey at Adventist school where I felt like I was getting less than any other student was getting. I'm clear that, you know, like Dr. Bowman was saying, it may not always have been, we may not have had the newest lab equipment or like the new shiny thing, but I had teachers who were concerned about making sure that I understood the information and making sure that they were preparing me to compete on any level with anybody else. So I don't think, you know, it doesn't always matter what the exterior of the building looks like. I think if you have teachers who are committed and dedicated and willing to put in the work and educate the children, then there's some things, I think that's worth much more than driving up to a bright, shiny building.
Now that's interesting. Someone just sent me a WhatsApp. I mean, I think they realize that I don't always get the questions that are posted in the chat. And, you know, they say that Adventist schools seem to focus more on remedial rather than excellence. Well, we are talking about the matter of excellence, and in terms of excellence, in terms of academics and in terms of the infrastructure. We want to make very clear that we believe in excellence. Now, education is very expensive, and it is sometimes unfortunate. In the chat last week, somebody said the folks who can afford Adventist education seem to send their children to other schools, unfortunately. But and then somebody responded by saying, you know, we need to look at how we measure cost, because an individual can be sent to a school with excellent facilities. If at the end of the day they lose their soul, then what's the cost? But it is important for us to make the point that we care about excellence and we're ever seeking to develop our infrastructure to reach a certain standard. But on the matter of the quality of the teachers, Dr. George Knight said that there are 6 takeaways. I was going to go to tertiary education, but since we're talking about teachers, I think this one is very important and we don't want to miss it. He said there are 6 takeaways that we should, a child going to the Adventist school must have. And I want to go to the last 3. If we have the time, we will come back to the first 3. But I want to go to the last 3 because I think it is very insightful. These last 3 he calls the essential takeaway. He says the most important thing for students to take away from Adventist higher education, and I'm saying any education, from Adventist education, is that they had teachers who truly cared about them, teachers who exhibited a service mentality before them, and teachers who were professionally competent. Now, there are 3 characteristics that are mentioned there. 1, teachers who cared about the students, teachers who cared truly about the students. Secondly, teachers who exhibited a servant mentality. And thirdly, teachers who are professionally competent. We were talking about teachers who care, teachers who are Christians at heart and want the best for their children. And what I hear Eulanie saying and what I hear Jermaine saying is that your experience was that the teachers that you came across seem to have done that for you.
Yeah, I mean, I can point to specific examples over the course of my time during Adventist school where if it were not for like the intuition of a teacher who was actually paying attention, or, you know, a teacher who realized that something was going on, to ask the right question or to pull me aside and say, hey, I noticed that, you know, you needed a new shirt and I bought this for you. Like teachers who would dip into their own pockets to make sure that I understood that I had value to them beyond just being just a random child they were teaching. I think that made a tremendous difference for me coming up in school, especially when I consider like some of the challenges economically and financially that my family had to keep me in Adventist school. I mean, that was worth more than anything to me.
Interesting. Now, I do want to touch on tertiary level education. The Seventh Adventist Church believes in education, and we have a number of tertiary level institutions, high quality tertiary level institutions. Um, uh, Dr. Bowman, you are the president now of USC, and uh, we have Eulanie, who went to, I can think of two tertiary level Adventist institutions. You were at Atlantic Union, you were at Andrews University, and Jermaine, you went to a non-Adventist tertiary level educational institution. So let me begin with you, Jermaine. What was your experience like? And while there, did you ever wish it was an Adventist institution?
Uh, the experience for me was good. I wouldn't say it's a bad experience. Uh, One of the incidents that you met with on a regular occasion is when there are events or there are even classes that are held on Sabbaths and challenge your faith. That's something that you would have to deal with. And in some cases, you're only one of thousands in some cases. And a teacher would really not bother with you as a one in particular case. Uh, and so as well too, you are exposed to so much on campus. I going off to Barbados as a young man, being on campus, and I was also playing football. And after practice, you hear the guys saying, "Oh, we're going beer lime," or we're going to the club. And again, you are one that are there, and you may be easily influenced. One of the things I would say though, on these campuses, especially the UWI campuses around the Caribbean, there's an institution called Advent Fellowship. And it's a group of Adventists who come together usually on a Friday night, and also band together for socials and those kind of stuff. That proved to be very instrumental, even on the secular campuses. The Advent Fellowship, that group was a tower of strength to young Adventists who were on these campuses, who on a Friday night can come together for worship and also can rely on each other even during the week. So I mean, if you have your head on, if you're focused, you can make it even on a secular institution campus. But it is not easy, as I would have learned from many of my friends who were actually on the Adventist campuses, who were not faced with many of the challenges that we were.
I'm quite familiar with APFEL. You know, I served there as the Advent Fellowship. That is, I served when I was in CUC in Trinidad. I served as a chaplain. The folks at the University of the West Indies reached out to me and asked me if I could come and be their chaplain. So I used to journey down there on Friday nights and have services with them when they had their camps go and minister to them, etc. That's interesting. Sister Eulanie, what was your experience like in a tertiary level Christian Adventist institution?
I think my experience was as anybody would expect. You know, we held pretty closely to the teachings of the Seventh-day Adventist Church. Finding a place to worship on a Friday evening was no problem because everything else around you on campus shut down. The only thing that you had opportunity to do was to go to Vespers and participate, and you went to church on Sabbaths with your friends to whichever of the many different services were available. So those opportunities were available. What I will say in full transparency is that I listened to Glenroy talk about his experience and, you know, having been presented with certain opportunities that he wasn't interested in while he was at school. It would be remiss of me to act like some of that does not exist on Seventh-day Adventist college campuses, because it does. I think the difference, though, is that there are more opportunities for you to make right choices or for you to make good choices and find yourself in the right place with good people than there are for you to do things the other way. it sounds like from Glenroy's experience, you had to find a few Adventists on campus to band together so that together you could support each other. Whereas on a predominantly Seventh-day Adventist campus, you had to find a few people who wanted to do something that they weren't supposed to be doing to make those choices. So it was just a lot more opportunity for you to do the right thing.
Now, some people say that sometimes Adventist campuses present a false reality. My experience again in CUC, Friday nights, everybody's going to worship. Sabbath, there's no distraction. It's easy for you to get in the groove. Some people say it presents a false reality. But Eulanie, you made a point that there are always those individuals. And interestingly, somebody out of Trinidad is saying that they have seen Adventist children from Adventist homes, from Adventist schools come to USC, and while at USC, exhibit negative behaviors with non-Adventist students, and they're wondering where was the failure. We talk about the home, the school, and the church, and that three institutions must work together. Dr. Bowman, I know you are a champion of this. Sometimes we see some very glaring failures, and I saw quite a number of questions last week asking, where is the failure? Is the school to replace the home? Some folks believe that if we do the right job in the home, it shouldn't matter where we send our children. Dr. Bowman, respond to that quickly.
Yes, I think that there is a significant role that the home has to play in relationship to how you nurture your child and help your child to develop, to combat those negatives in life. And when they come to USC, they're here with us for a few years, and we have to try to help to work with them and nurture them. It is indeed a challenge, and we recognize that some of that would happen, but whenever we see it happen, we deal with it and try to help these young people to move forward. As Eulanie just said, there are more opportunities in some universities than others. I want to touch on that one, that right now at USC, we realize that it is difficult for one university, even within the church, to offer all the programs for our young people. So what we have done, we have started to form alliances with 119 universities that the church has. It's a great networking. And so you could come to USC for a program that would take you 2 years, and we will point you to Walla Walla, who would do the second 2 years in engineering for us. And when you graduate, you get a Walla Walla degree, or you get a Andrews University degree. So the collaboration and that alliance is important for us. In terms of best teachers, we do look for the best teachers we can find. But again, when you have almost 200 faculty members on your campus, you have to look at them carefully, and you have to work with them and help to train them even on the job sometimes, so that they understand the value system and understand the philosophy of operating schools. So in all, I think there are some issues that you will find in every school, but once we recognize them, we'll deal with them, because we are concerned about the Adventists, and we're concerned about those who are not Adventists. We have to work with all of them to bring them closer to God.
Dr. Bowman, I don't want to end this program before addressing a major issue on the chat. Several persons since last week have been asking about non-Adventist teachers in Adventist institutions. Now, I know we have a philosophy, but I see so many persons asking, why do we have non-Adventist teachers at USC? Why do we have non-Adventist teachers? Now, I've also heard from significant individuals, even at USC, that some of the non-Adventist teachers enforce the Adventist position more than the Adventist teachers. But speak to the issue of what kind of non-Adventist teachers and under what circumstances do we have those?
Well, I would say that sometimes it is difficult to have Adventist teachers in some of the areas that we have, in terms of subject areas or degrees. And so we have to go out. And we chatted with the accreditation team, and the accreditation team, AAA, spoke to us about, we have to bring down that number, and we are trying to bring that number down, because I preach throughout the Caribbean Union that is only a good Adventist educator who can transmit Adventist values. So it's difficult to ask another denomination lecturer to implement Adventist values. It's difficult. They try, but it's difficult. So what we're doing, we are having workshops with them. We are having conferences, and we're trying to help them, those that we have who are not Adventists. And I can tell you that they are really, really trying. And we have seen many of those lecturers give their heart to Jesus in baptism. We have seen that also. But the point is well taken. We wish we can have 100% Adventists, because it only takes a good Adventist to impart Adventist values. So, but we are working, and we have a buddy system where they can walk along, an Adventist and non-Adventist would walk along, help them in integration of faith and learning. We would have special, this month, next week, we're having a very special session with all of them, all our employees, faculty, as it relates to integration of faith and learning and the philosophy of education for the church. So we would have a few that are not Adventists, and that's true. And I don't think they're terrible outright, because if we find that there's a problem, we will deal with it. And we do have Adventists sometimes who get off the other direction. So it's a work in progress. We work together as a people to have our people trained for the work that they've been asked to do.
Now, before Sister Eulanie, go ahead.
So I was going to say, I think that there is an inherently flawed assumption that there is nothing, especially at the tertiary level, that can be learned from a professor who is non-Adventist.
Yeah.
I think by and large, when we bring professors into our institutions, we are looking for people who are experts in their field or who are skilled in their area that they're coming to teach. And so the assumption is that, especially at the tertiary level in college, you are trying to gain something from an expert in their field. So the notion that's not possible because a person is not Seventh-day Adventist, I don't think holds up in tertiary institutions. I think the other thing that I was thinking through as you were talking, you said you got a message where someone was asking you where the failure is. Is it in the home, or is it in the school, or is it in the church? Like, how do kids who grew up in good Adventist homes come to school and go wild? I think in addition to making sure that we're passing on good Adventist principles that we're all familiar with, I think one of the things that we have to make sure that we're doing as parents first, and then in the church and in the school as well, is to make sure that we're also teaching our children how to love Jesus and how to stay in connection with him. Because often when we're in a place where all I learn is how to keep the rules, when I get into a situation where I can make my own rules and there's nobody to enforce the rules I've historically been with, I have nothing to ground me. I have nothing to keep me. So I think that's one of the things that we have to be careful of, especially as parents, is not just to say you don't do this and you don't do that, but also teach the child how to love Jesus and how that relationship helps them hold on to some of our traditional Adventist principles.
May I add to that? I think from my experience, especially, I think there's some inherent dangers in sheltering our children. I have seen many a young person who, as if the chain has burst when they reach tertiary education. And just as you see them bolting out of the church, for many of them is because of the shelteredness in which they were brought up, and they have not been exposed to anything. And I think that there's an inherent danger in having our children raised, especially those who came from Adventist homes, having them raised so sheltered that as they get out there, it's like they're in a place that they don't know. And curiosity gets the best of them.
Yeah, I think we're definitely, our education is supposed to prepare us for life, but it's not just, you know, our education doesn't just although it's primary, our education prepares us for the life to come, but it also needs to prepare us for living in this world, knowing that not everybody we will come into contact with will share our beliefs or our experiences. We have to take into account that we're raising children, or we're raising a generation that needs to be able to live in this world and live out their principles despite all the other pressures. So I completely agree with you, Glenroy. We can't grow them in a bubble. I would like to, because it's easier that way, but we can't grow them in a bubble.
Well, you know, we are having a good discussion, but our time is up. I do want to thank
Dr. Greene, that
yes.
I just say that we are very selective when we employ non-Adventists. We are very selective, because if you might have the best PhD degree, but if we see signs that it's going to be dangerous, we put you aside.
Well, I want to think too that the selectiveness doesn't just hold for non-Adventists, but also for Adventists.
Yes.
Because you can have some Adventists with some perspectives that may not be necessarily good. I also want to make the point that we are not in any way decrying secular education. We do believe that there are great teachers there. Education is important. The point that we want to drive home today is that the Adventist Church believes that there is another dimension. We are not just preparing students for academic. We want academic excellence, but we also want our children to remain loyal and faithful to God. And we're saying the Adventist system is the best place where you can be guaranteed of such an emphasis. I want to thank you all. I remind us that Let's Talk is here to discuss real issues. Now, there was a particular question that we did not answer. It was about the statistics and the relevance of the statistics and the date of the statistics, but have no fear. Week after next, we're going to be having Dr. David Trim. He is the head of the Archives and Statistics Division at the General Conference. We're going to be talking about church conservation. We will have some issues on what statistics say about Christian education, etc. Next week, we will have Dr. Leonard Johnson, the Executive Secretary of the Inter-American Division. We are going to be discussing the topic of church members' involvement in politics. That is the discussion for next week, especially in the Caribbean context. You know, politics is a big thing. Should we vote? Should we campaign? Should we run for politics, etc.? We're going to be talking about that next week. And as I indicated, on the 12th of September, next week is the 5th, on the 12th of September, we talk about church conservation and statistics and what they say about our systems, our methods, etc. Then on the 19th of September, we hope to have a very interesting discussion where we're going to be talking about one of those scientific topics. We're going to be talking about artificial intelligence and how that impacts Christians. And we hope to have a doctor, I forget his name now, but coming out of the UK, he's going to be talking with us and, you know, the implications of artificial intelligence. So these days, you can talk to individuals. I saw a robot the other day, and it looked like a girl, spoke like a girl, answered like a girl, but it was a robot. What's the implications for that? Then on the 26th of September, we will have Dr. Brown, one of the associate secretaries of the General Conference, and we're going to be talking about same-sex relations. So that's the lineup for September. We have some more intriguing topics coming up in October, but I'll just give you a bit at a time. So we're here every Sabbath afternoon at 3 p.m., 3 to 4 p.m. Well, that's all the time we have right now. I should be on another program in Suriname right now. Thank you all so much. I'm going to give you a minute to say a closing word. I want to emphasize before we leave that Adventist education may cost a bit, but it is a worthwhile investment. Now, I want to give you all, starting with Eulanie, then Mr. Jarvis and Dr. Bowman, 1 minute to say a closing thought.
Pastor Greene, I really just wanted to say thank you for having me. This has been a very good discussion for me, and it's helped cemented some of the choices that I've made for my own for my own kids. So I appreciate that. I said it last week. I'll say it again. I have no regrets about my education. I feel like I got the best of all worlds, and I came away as a more rounded person and very prepared to take on the challenges of this world and the world to come. And there's very little that I could have, there's no amount of money that I feel like I could have paid for that. So thanks again for having me. Good to have been with you all.
Most welcome. Mr. Jarvis?
All right, thanks much as well for having me. I readily accepted the invitation to come onto this program because I truly think that my experience is a testimony of the importance and the goodness of Adventist education and its impact on someone's life. And as I say, it's more than just education academics. It's education for life, as the motto of our school here stated. And there's no amount of money that I could have paid for the transformation that has happened to me. And so even if it's a bit more expensive, the investment is well worth it.
Thank you so much. Dr. Bowman.
Dr. Greene, I want to firstly thank you and your leadership team at the conference for this initiative, and to have it every month, every week. It's a tremendous sacrifice, but it's a good thing. It's a good program, and I would encourage you to continue to foster this program. I really enjoy the 2 weeks that I spend with you. I want to leave these words with my viewers and to everyone listening, is that every child, every Adventist child has a right to Adventist education. Every Adventist child has a right to Adventist education. Do not disappoint him or her. It may mean his eternal destiny. Thank you for listening to me. God bless.
Most welcome. Thank all of you again. Truly appreciate your presence and the very meaningful and worthwhile contribution that you have made. God bless you and take care.